All right, welcome back everyone, and good afternoon. We are now very excited to start the afternoon with a very important session on a topic that has been kind of touched but not discussed in depth. And we have, and it's my personal pleasure to have Gianluca Misuraca here with us. I've known Gianluca now for quite some time. We have done a lot of work together. And I'm very happy that he will tell us what he thinks about the governance of with and by AI, unveiling the future of AI for government. So that looks really promising and exciting. And knowing Gianluca, I'm pretty sure he will stay true to these expectations. So let me just say a few words about what Gianluca does, although to do this in few words is extremely complex. He's here as the executive director of AI for Gov, and he will speak about these projects and this initiative. He's with the University Politécnica of Madrid, but he also has several other important positions. He's the co-founder and vice president in technology diplomas in international relations at Inspiring Futures, which is based in Switzerland, I understand. And he is also a team leader and a senior key expert on AI diplomacy and strategic communication at a project called intouchai.eu. Gianluca, the floor is yours. We will be listening carefully to your inspiring words.
Well, grazie, Emanuele. Thanks a lot. And of course, after such introduction, I hope I will be up to the expectation. And let me start by thanking all the organizers, of course, and clearly one among them that is Francesco Muretto, that of course, I'm not sure if I should actually thank him, because when he invited me for the keynote, I said, okay, but what I will say to this audience, no, that doesn't know yet. So of course, then I decided, as I'm also a futurist, to talk about the future, so that I cannot be wrong, no, because nobody knows about the future. So, but let me also express thanks again to Emanuele and all the other co-chair of this fantastic conference. It's also a pleasure that for the first time, actually, I'm here, despite I've been somehow involved with the conference since the origins, when I was working for the European Commission, and then afterward, but for a reason or the other, I couldn't make it to Cambridge or London or Hong Kong and Seattle, and but here in Brussels, where I come often, although I'm still based in Seville, and where I've been, let's say, where I went for a weekend and I stayed for 12 years actually now, or even more. So basically, I will, in fact, start from discussing about the future. And so some scenarios that we developed back in 2020 about, how digital Europe could be in 20 years from then. So what I'll try to do in this, well, let's say half an hour with you to go back and forth to the future, so that we can see exactly how we were thinking about the future, and what is actually changing also our perception about the future with what is happening today. Not only the COVID pandemic that seems that has gone, but we never know. And then also the, the Russian aggression to Ukraine and all the other scandals and crises that are happening around the world and in Brussels. And of course, I will discuss about the main topic about AI in public services, with what I say, the governance of, with and by artificial intelligence, and specific focus on what the Commission is actually doing. The EU is trying to do exactly to make, AI being adopted finally by society and the public sector in particular. And then I will also mention a bit on what's now becoming a bit more real with the approval of the agreement in the compromise text of the AI Act just a few weeks ago, last week actually, and in Prague. So before that, as Emanuele said, what I'm more or less trying to do at the moment. I just wanted to emphasize that, of course, some of the research that I'm also presenting build on the work I've been doing for 12 years, as I said, for the European Commission Joint Research Center, where I went in 2009. And then I left exactly when, I went because I'm passionate or sometimes even obsessed about the future. But so I went there to do foresight. And then when I left, I was very happy that actually the Commission has now with the von der Leyen Commission, a Vice President, Maros Šefčovič, in charge of foresight. And so I will tell you at the end a bit of the work that I also had the pleasure to do, for him. So this means that I could actually go back to what I was doing before joining the Commission, that I was working for private sector, academia, and international organization at the global level. So now I'm trying to do, I don't know if I will resist more to do all at the same time. So that's what I'm doing with IF, so my company, the Master on AI for Government, the project that I will mention, and the International Outreach for Human-Centric AI, that is an initiative I will briefly mention. And so since I've been navigating through public sector innovation and foresight for more than 2 decades, now I actually started this summer to really sailing for true. And let's see how it goes. But let's start from the future, because of course, we have an educated audience, as I say. So we all know that AI is changing already our lives. And someone, if you take a techno-deterministic perspective, actually think that super AI will be there, is already coming. Maybe not today, tomorrow, or in a couple of weeks. Singularity dream with the positive or negative consequences will actually have influences. In the meantime, sorry, I just received also some announce here on the Zoom. I don't know if I need to manage it myself or I'm meeting people, and maybe someone is doing. So basically this, in my opinion, but I think we all share the fact that we are just at the beginning, actually, of this deep dive into the digital transformation. In fact, these expectations are not necessarily coupled with the social-political trends. I mentioned some of the issues we are living every day, but if we look at the digital realm, let's say, there are issues that are there since many years. The tech giants that are, jeopardizing the economy. We was Microsoft before, now is Google, Twitter, or Facebook. There is the need to regulate this digital sphere, and there is the threat of algorithmic governance that is actually now assuming a global perspective. Of course, the role of the state, so who will actually govern this process, is not clear. And there is the issue of data protection, privacy, and of course, the data governance that is very much discussed here that is still unclear. And then, and we will see these towards the end of the presentation, there are a lot of dilemmas that are nowadays between technological sovereignty and global digital geopolitics. What Cass Sunstein already in 2005 talked about the precautionary principle in his book, The Law of Fear, and how we actually instead ensure digital resilience, especially when we see phenomena like the COVID that showed how we are unprepared for anything that is outside our kind of normality. Now, I won't go too much into details because this has been actually presented in other contexts, but just to remind ourselves how the future could look like, depending on the decision that our policymakers will take today, and will affect not only us, but more important, our future generations, so our children and the children of our children. So, of course, we see there is an issue of regulation, whether we will have a more laissez-faire approach or a more interventionist approach will change the way the digital society will look like. And so also is how the citizens will move from being just passive, as we are today, with just a click on any GDPR notice, hoping this won't make any wrong, but actually, if we really become empowered and own our own data, and these has to do also with the issues of digital sovereignty, and we will see at the end is affecting everybody. Of course, as all futurists knows, there's no one scenario. Actually, a scenario is just a possible world, a world that does not have to be, but may yet come to pass. But if we look at the scenario that we depicted, also with some here in the room that contributed, we created as part of this project a very, let's say, a group of scientific experts that helped us also thinking about the future. And we were just in the middle of the pandemic. Of course, we all hope, as I always say to my daughter, Leila, that we should aim at the ideal scenario, no? A scenario that is where, you know, the dream of Tim Berners-Lee could actually become reality, where we have a trusted and open society, and actually use technology and the landscape of the digital world is where the shapers and the makers of innovation actually come together to make, the positive use of these technologies. But in reality, apart from the apathic and closed innovation world in which we actually live, we could even have worse scenarios with, more algorithmic control and a state of surveillance and fear. So I won't go much into detail of this, but just to emphasize some of the issues that we actually already know, because now after 20, 30 years that many of us, I was discussing with Jacopo before, that we have been in this field, we see that it's not just a technological problem. There are many economic and social and political issues that need to be addressed if we really want to transform and not just digitize, our things and making actually more mistakes by just mirroring what our real world into a digital one. So we actually need to reframe, maybe often in a radical way, how our public sector system works. And this have to, means addressing the multidimensional aspects of the digital transformation. Of course, as I said, we have published many reports that I'm not going into details, and I invite you to read. But I was very happy in 2020 that actually the Berlin Declaration of Ministers, I don't know if by accident or maybe they've been looked at the reports of JRC and other colleagues, they were actually building on some of our recommendations. And we have really a change, at least in the rhetoric of the policy direction that the European Union should go into a more value-based digital society. And again, I don't go into details, but just let me jump now into the topic, let's say, after the starter, let's say, and hopefully, unfortunately, Francesco didn't give us a full Sardinian menu, otherwise it would be difficult to follow. And now we are in the main plate. Now, in 2020, of course, we all have been dealing with the pandemic, but there was also a very interesting documentary that was titled, "We Need to Talk About AI." Probably passed unobserved exactly because of that. And I would say actually, because of the pandemic, but actually we need to talk about AI in the public sector. And this was something that remember with Emanuele, I'm sure we talked many times, even here in Brussels or in many places, that okay, the public sector is not so important. And actually, this is where there are some of the most impactful decisions that are taken also because of AI systems that are becoming mainstream. There is a proliferation of facial recognition systems around the world. I was recently in South America, and it's quite scary the way they want to use, and they're already using biometric systems. And of course, the COVID-19 somehow just exacerbated these threats. Because they had to react very quickly. They were not prepared. We were not prepared. And actually, this kind of challenges were already there, and the risks are just becoming more and more evident. We all know the benefits and the risk of using AI in government, because there is the high potential. I think we all agree of using data, the computing power that has been growing exponentially, and also the algorithms that are becoming more and more I wouldn't say intelligent, but at least more sophisticated. And this could provide actually information for policymakers to provide, for instance, a personalized solution to citizens. But there are many risks. I won't go into that because you are all experts on these. I call them, for instance, discrimination by default, because of course, if we use data that are already of poor quality and biased by the society that produce this data, they will actually just create intensify the asymmetry and risk to penalize citizens in vulnerable situations. But also we know that these systems are far from being intelligent, and actually there are many errors that can increase also, for instance, the danger of mass surveillance or creating paradoxes. So we want to, have more data evidence or data-driven decision, and in reality we risk to create just a more unfair society. So these, and again, I won't go into details, but as a result of a white paper I've written for the Digital Future Society in last year, we analyzed some cases that everybody's talking about, but of course, in most cases, they are just looking at what the latest newspaper article mentioned. So we try to go a bit beyond that and looking at cases that even in for the time being, still a very democratic Europe, are showing how we risk to have unexpected consequences of using these systems. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the Siri systems in the Netherlands, that actually somehow also had as a consequence the resignation of the government that then was actually re-elected. But actually with the idea of trying to optimize the systems to identify frauds in the social services, they created paradoxes of creating more problems for vulnerable groups in society from migrant backgrounds or poor situation. In Denmark also, and we cannot really say that Denmark is not a democratic country, actually there was a system that tried to help people and children, families with at risk to bring out of this family children. But in reality, they actually created, again, a situation of discrimination, children at risk, of course. And as I said already, facial recognition systems are quite used and abused in many countries in the world, including in Europe, unfortunately. And also, specifically, we have cases in the digital welfare system, where with the use of this technology, we are trying, of course, to use and optimize, again, some services, but in many cases, we are creating some situation of discrimination, this being in education, in social services, or in employment services. I mean, some of these cases are by now becoming more and more studied, and there are more that are coming to the surface. So what I want to actually emphasize is that, of course, policymakers are facing a big dilemmas. One of them is that they have the obligations to protect citizens, of course, from the risks that these AI systems could actually have. But of course, they want to use this technology also for the good of society. So how can they deal with this dilemma, or actually trilemma? Because on one side, they have to regulate. So there is the issue that is now under debate here especially in Europe, but now is a global debate, for instance, about the AI Act and other regulatory mechanisms. But of course, this has to be done on top of the existing regulations. And this is an issue that, of course, we could stay. I mean, there are many conferences only discussing that. Then there is the issue of using AI in public sector in particular, where of course we have to make sure that humans remains in control. There is an oversight of these technologies, and so we make sure that we safeguard human rights and we deploy this technology in an ethical manner. But then what I argue is that also at a certain point we have to also let it go in a way, because of course the good part of these technologies, differently from other technologies, they can really provide support and augment the capacity of the human beings that are limited to, I mean, we are all limited to many extent. So once we surrender to these superhuman capacities, of course, we can get a lot of benefits from this technology, but also there are an exponential growth. There is an exponential growth of the risks and challenges that we have to somehow govern. And of course, if we manage to do that, we have somehow found the Holy Grail that is not yet there. So conferences like these are really needed for addressing all these issues. So to summarize this part, I would say that we have to be aware, of course, of any techno solutionism that could be, the shortcuts also to try to understand these AI systems. And of course, as I say, often is not enough to have a philosopher in the room and then you have solved all the ethical issues. You really need to have a public value perspective, but also a government need to be ready to really handle disruption that these technologies can bring into the organization. This means designing new models of governance, also rethinking the way the services are delivered, data is managed, and the way the algorithmic decision-making is actually implemented. So, of course, we were already somehow assessing this issue in the last couple of years, and now exactly last year, actually 2 years ago, we came up with a first analysis of what is actually happening, what is the reality. We know the theory, but that our government in Europe and in the world actually using AI. And this map that we did, I have to admit, overnight before a workshop we had in Brussels in February 2020, just before the pandemic, became somehow viral because it was the first ever kind of visual representation of what's happening in Europe. And we actually asked the government what they were doing. And also we had the problem that there was not, and there is not yet a real definition of what is AI and how actually AI is used in the public sector. So we used a very pragmatic approach of our, actually deriving a typology from what was from the cases that we actually collected at the time when I was working at JRC. We had collected 230 cases. Now my former team has got over 600 cases, so they are reinforcing these typologies and then trying to see the real adoption and use of these cases. Now, and again, I won't go into details also because this is somehow outdated, but I just want to make the point that if we look at the use of AI at the time, but still today, this is quite superficial in public sector, even in the advanced Europe. So they can use a lot of chatbots, so they can use some machine learning or advanced statistical systems, but they don't use really the potential of this set of technologies altogether. And also when you ask why you're using that, and we use the typology that was developed by colleagues in the US, also we see that only a small percentage, at least of our sample, was actually going from for the entire value chain and actually making automatic adjudication of the benefits, for instance. The rest is just, supporting service provision, some kind of matching services, supporting internal management, or a little less on regulatory research and monitoring, for instance, decision support systems and so forth. Also, we looked at the time, and I don't do the comparison with the situation now because there's another report that came out last year. But basically, we looked at the very first proposal of actions under the national strategies at the time available, only 14, if I recall, out of the 27 member states. Part of the coordinated plan of action on AI that was launched in 2018 for the first time. And if we want to use a metaphor of public policy, there was a lot of sermons, so a lot of rhetoric and blah, 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 someone would say, and very little incentives and carrots and sticks, no incentives to really do things, or actually to sanction, so with the stick. So again, a lot of let's say peer learning, data exchanges of practices, etc. So somehow, for who has been around for some years now, getting old, so it's a bit of a deja vu. The same phenomenon of digital government or even the e-government first wave. We see a lot of heterogeneity of uses. Everybody is looking for the best practice to replicate or transfer or copy. And a lot of pilots, but nobody going, let's say, addressing this syndrome that we have of ever piloting. And how we make sure that these projects, very interesting, become mainstream and institutionalized. Very little evidence, so a lot of work for us, for research, to make sure that we have some let's say more robust evidence to provide to policymakers, so to make sure that their strategies are actually strengthened. And I will be back on public procurement and also the different roles of government that are, of course, needed for this. So on one side, I think we were successful somehow, Emanuele, because we made sure that in the new version of the coordinated plan of action, there is a full chapter on public sector. This was not the case on the previous one. And actually, there was this fantastic way of presenting to make the public sector a trailblazer for using AI. And this is the text coming from the review coordinated plan of action, where in fact there is the acknowledgement of the important role of the public sector, and also, of course, coupled with the resilience and recovery framework fund that was, of course, due to the COVID launched. And again, the importance of that was received by, listening to many recommendations, including us, to focus on public procurement and also to go local. So now there's a much more importance on the, the role of cities and local governments, and this is an important part of the action plan. I have to admit, I haven't done the exercise yet. I hope someone is doing it to see how much this is really now implemented. I know there are a lot of initiatives like the Living in EU, the many activities, but some projects that were promising, like DT for regions or others, are not, in my view, still, let's say, implementing this successfully. Of course, as I said, my colleagues at the former AI Watch, because I understand this will be dismantled somehow, but somehow they've been doing a lot of research following the initial work we have done and trying to address exactly this issue, how we move beyond the pilots, how we pave the roadmap for AI in public services. And there are publications that I invite you to read. I won't go into too much into details. Of course, I was happy to see that the work we started continued, but I was even more happy to see that they quoted actually the program that I started with other colleagues as a model or potential model, a promising one, for how we should address the need of the lack of, actually, I would say, of competencies of civil servants and policymakers. And that's why, I don't need to make publicity. Actually, we are trying to not tell too much that we have this program, because we are victim of the success. We got 40 participants in the first pilot edition, and now other 40 in the Master on AI for Public Services. That actually is also funded by the Commission, by the Connecting Europe facility, and is a pilot edition. We are the first, and for the time being, the only one that is trying to address this, and is a consortium with the Politécnica Madrid and Politécnica di Milano that are actually awarding the master. And then we have also other partners like Taltech and FAO, because the idea is not only to do a master, but actually to develop an ecosystem and a center of excellence on AI for government. So we are actually also calling for partners and for the next phase that we hope to start next year. And for that, we are actually also supporting and the very important need of building GovTech ecosystems. On this also, there are initiatives from the Commission, from Digit in particular, and from Connect on the GovTech platforms and the incubators. I think this is important because, government alone and policymakers alone will not make it. They need help, a lot of help from academia, startups, the entire ecosystems to work together and make sure that actually we can develop innovative solutions based on AI and data. And also, as I say, I repeat it, as I say, repetita iuvant, we have to innovate the public procurement systems. The Adopt AI program was supposed to be launched in 2020. I remember I was still at GRC when we were revising the terms of reference. It's not yet out. I think this has to be accelerated because there's a lot of need to reinforce this. And actually, most of the governments in Europe, according to a study we've done, are not actually developing or implementing even internal guidelines on how to use innovative public partnership, for instance, public-private partnership that are already available, and not to mention about AI or innovative technologies. So On the other side, we have the ambition, and I'm very, I was very glad that with the von der Leyen Commission, there was this high importance given to digital, and we want actually to lead the digital decade. But then we have to ask ourselves how we can make sure that we can turn the European Union into really the global hub for human-centric AI. And of course, there are a lot of communication and regulations and strategies and white papers that has been done. And of course, I've been doing with this other colleagues a review for the European Parliament. Okay, it's not so popular at the moment, but to make sure that there was a strategy, a review of the strategy on digital strategy of the Commission, and we found a lot of things that are not clear. Huh? So, and maybe it's something to be improved. Even very basic simulation, Monte Carlo simulation, and things like that show that some target need some more substance. But still, there's a lot of work has been done, and someone even think that there is a world after the AI Act that will be fantastic because of the AI Act, but not only, also because we have now a better coordinated plan of action on AI. Of course, I'm joking. I believe this is a very important way that the Commission has taken, and the EU in particular, because it's needed, and we are the only region in the world that can do that. Maybe Stefan will not agree, but I think it's very important because of the values and the principles that we do have, and the way we need to also init the debate with the European citizens. Again, I won't go into details. We are all aware that there are three main pillars of the digital strategies of the EU. So one is on data, one is human-centric AI, and then on digital infrastructure. But what is important, and I will also skip that is actually the way on the path to digital decade, with indicators that, as I say, some may be actually or should be actually reinforced. But actually want to also pay tribute to colleagues like Emanuele, because one of the keystone, I think, and President von der Leyen said in her State of the Union, is actually the need to improve interoperability. And definitely this is something we have been doing for many years, but and maybe I was joking about this, but maybe it could even be true. But I remember, and that was actually one of the reasons that I said to Francesco, I will come, because I realized that this event is happening exactly 3 years from when we had an event with Joop and Emanuele and other colleagues in Leuven at the Interoperability Academy. And 3 years later, we have the Interoperable Europe Act. Maybe it's a coincidence, but clearly this is something we've been discussing, and many colleagues, of course, have been working seriously on that in many occasions. But when we talk about interoperability, it's not interoperability in as such, but how actually in this context interoperability can be the key for artificial intelligence to really become the game changer for public administrations, with all exactly the high potential that we mentioned already. But also, there is an important work that is being done at the global level. So also with the other hat of the IntouchAI.eu, we have been advising the Commission, for instance, in the recent roadmap for evaluation and measurement tools for trustworthy AI and risk management that was adopted last week at the TTC summit. And here again, interoperability is essential to enable the uptake of AI technology. And that's why there is this strong reference. I counted 4 times in a short document of 11 pages mentioning to interoperability and standards. Interoperability is key for the standards of AI to be effective. Otherwise, we are just talking the blah, blah, blah we were mentioning before. This is part, as I said, of the project I had the pleasure to lead, where we are supporting policy dialogues with like-minded countries and not necessarily like-minded. And also we provide technology diplomacy support to the Commission. But this brings me to the last point, and then I'm done. Sorry that I went a bit longer, but basically, I mean, we have what I said at the beginning, digital sovereignty and the global issues and the global AI governance are somehow two sides of the same coin. And on one side, we have to really address the question of ensuring digital resilience and the collective well-being, but at the same time, safeguarding liberal democracy and individual rights. And this is not easy, but so we have to find the Holy Grail that we were looking for. How we govern AI while governing with and by AI. Or as Luciano Floridi wrote in a fantastic paper, is somehow like the investiture controversy. You may remember, no, when there was the fight between, the religious war, and somehow this was affecting, I mean, the outcome of it has affected all people in the world, no matter whether they were religious or not. And this is the same for the fight of digital sovereignty. This will determine the lives of all people on both sides of the digital divides. So then again, we have to ask ourselves if what Cass Sunstein was saying in 2005, actually his book was now republished exactly because of during the COVID, this issue was whether we just don't do anything and wait, or we try to intervene and make a regulation, for instance, on AI, not exactly knowing what is AI now and in the future would be needed. And so, of course, it would be probably easier not to intervene, or at least safer, but probably we will lose a lot of opportunities. So we have to go back to inspiring futures. And this is again quoting President von der Leyen. She said in her last State of the Union that we should manage successfully the green and the digital transitions that will be the cornerstone for delivering a sustainable, fair and competitive future. And this, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I was pleased that after having let's say, pledged and advocated that for many years, we have a vice president in the commission that deal with foresight. And every year, he with, of course, with all the services of the commission, deliver a strategic foresight report. So this year, I was leading the digital part of it on towards a green and digital future. And clearly, this is also something specific that in Europe we have. And I know that the next presidency of the EU Council, Sweden, will focus a lot on the AI for sustainability and sustainable AI, that I think is fundamental, because we all know that I mean, we are both humans and machine evolving by nature, but the only constant in life is change, as Heraclitus of Ephesus already said some time ago. So I'll stop here and thank you for the attention.
Thanks a lot, Gianluca. This was very inspirational indeed. You promised to talk about the future, but this is our present, in fact, as you have very much highlighted. Now we have a little bit of time for your questions and comments. I would invite you to take the floor. We'll come with the mic and help you. Please raise your hand. It's the last time, huh, Stefan? Then you will not be given the mic anymore. Use it well.
I'm just going to get started, but a wonderful presentation as always. Thanks so much. But focusing on governance of AI as one particular element, the question I have is, do we actually also have to be more innovating in how we govern technology in order to be able to govern AI? And especially given the fact that AI is still very dynamic, how do we experiment more in actually different kinds of AI governance? And as you know, I've been advocating that we actually can learn a lot from experimentation at the local level on how AI is being governed. And so eager to hear, anyway, how you see, is the current governance system actually capable of governing AI? Or should we also innovate in how we govern AI, given the fact that we are dealing with kind of a unique technology as well?
Why don't you go ahead and answer immediately?
Yes, well, I mean, this is personal view, of course, because, this is crucial in the debate at the moment, especially after the recent text that's been approved, agreed in the council. But I mean, of course, yes, we need to be innovative also, definitely on that. There is a promising let's say experiment that is actually the regulatory sandbox that Spain is starting. So we are all waiting for, and a lot of people ask me as well. I say, okay, I'm only living in Spain. It doesn't mean that I know what they're doing, but clearly there is a lot of expectation from that. So that, and also I think in Norway also they did something. They're doing something similar. Is something where we need to really do it seriously, because otherwise. If we just want to somehow confirm what we would like the governance system of AI be by this, would be more like a policy-based evidence rather than evidence-based policy. And the other point on local, I think this is very important, that we go where things are really happening and not just talking in general. But then there are other issues more technical that are under discussion. For instance, where to put, how we do manage the authorities. So if this will be done by member states at the central level, these are more technical issues. We have now, I was telling someone, at least until the Spanish presidency, there will be discussion in the trialogue. So there will be a lot of opportunity, maybe also for academia, civil society to express their views. What I know, because it's clear there is no enough competence in the member states, and maybe even in the commission or in the organization about this, because this is pretty new. What is new, and maybe I didn't emphasize much because, as I said, I didn't want to make publicity of the program I'm managing, but what we do there, we take experienced people. They already have some, are even ending their career, but basically they are expert in, for instance, in data management or in public administration or something else, and we put them together. And that's already is a learning experience. And then we teach them a bit about the technique of AI, data management with project-based work, but also we use a design thinking. So the partner in Politécnica Milano is the Department of Design, you know very well. So basically we try to redesign and even ask us basic questions. Why you want to use AI, or what kind of data would you use? And this is what we see a lot of interest and actually growing. And that's where the interdisciplinarity of the approach should probably also be done, so to avoid just to have a lawyer and a philosopher in the room trying to define the ethical aspects of AI.
Thanks a lot. More question? I see a hand up. Yes, we'll go there next. No, that's okay. That's okay. We'll go there next. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. Quick question. So what I see when I talk to policymakers is you have AI, but then it becomes a hammer and everything else is a nail, right? So it's like, let's use AI. So I wonder, looking ahead, what do you think the conversation is going to be like in asking questions about whether to use AI in the first place, and whether it's just automation or more data use rather than using AI, and where you think that is heading?
Yeah, well, quick question, quick answer. Yes, AI actually is becoming even counterproductive to just say, okay, AI will solve the world. Even in our program, we are waiting for when I don't know if I can say that, when the funding of the commission will end, and we may actually remove the AI, because actually we are not talking about AI all the time. We're talking about data governance, we are talking about public administration, and most fundamental issues, and then AI comes on top of that. But of course, the funding was for AI, so and now there's a lot of rhetoric on that. But we know this, and probably AI, as it is prominent at the moment, in a few years won't be so. Everybody would have understood, hopefully, by that time, that it's not just taking 1 kilo of AI and you have solved your corruption problem.
Thank you. We have another question.
Realize about the capabilities of AI somehow. And so I was just wondering that, given that tech giants have always led the development and implementation of AI. I just wonder if it's fair to say that we're starting to wake up now when it comes to the capabilities of AI, and especially in the public sector. And I'm making this remark because I'm especially concerned about the use of AI in the healthcare system, for instance, where there is a lot of room for improvement, but I don't see much movement in this regard. I don't know, I might be wrong, so I just wanted to get your opinion.
Yeah, well, maybe I start from the second question, where actually this is one of the key areas where AI could really be beneficial, health, and actually, if you look at I think one of the the first communication of AI made in Europe is actually health is the first sector, and that will be focused more and more as an area to develop, and also is an area where international collaboration is very important, and where AI could help cross-border, cross-nation, and cross-region collaboration. So there's a lot happening still in the research area. Maybe exactly because the legal framework and the ethical aspects are so disputed, there's not much yet implementation. And also because the health systems, as many other public sector systems, are not necessarily ready to adopt these in many countries. On the other point about the tech giant, okay, that's brings also to another discussion, because of course there are now other regulatory proposals of the Digital Service Act and the Digital Market Act that are also trying to address these issues in terms of the market power. But the other side, yes, of course, the private sector has always been pioneering in this field. So the public sector is well, maybe you are right, is waking up after a long time, but now the problem is that they think that they can just use the hammer, as Sarah said, to solve the problems and catch up very rapidly. There's a lot of work to be done before. Now, of course, the problem is also that then on the public sector, again, there is no capacity to understand what is real and what is just marketing from the other side, and how to use this technology. So that's why we need to educate the policymakers and the civil servant that then have to do a procurement about something that they don't know what is it and why they want to procure it. Maybe they don't need it.
We are coming to the end of this session, unfortunately, because this is a very important and interesting conversation. I hope we'll sit again in 3 years, Gianluca, and we will have another piece of the governance puzzle being solved in the meantime, as you have mentioned, but this is very poor predictive analytics, and you cannot project the future on the basis of the past. But thanks a lot for opening us our minds and eyes on what is going on, and enriching the discussion on this point. I'm pretty sure this will come back in the next sessions. Thanks again, Gianluca.
Thank you.